The story kicks off on a freezing mountain in the dead of night, while a fierce blizzard batters the area. In this scene we see a bearded dude warming himself by a fire, enjoying a hot drink. Suddenly footprints in the snow show that someone is approaching his camp. The bearded guy notices the presence but keeps drinking calmly, staring into the darkness. The one approaching is our MC, who hears his target ask if he isn't a bit too overdressed for this neck of the woods. Next, Jay whips out his phone with his target's picture, and comments that he could barely recognize him. Simon Jones is stunned to have been found and asks if it was the Union that sent him. Right then, he identifies the assassin in the suit as the legendary Jay, a hitman of Asian descent. Jay then introduces himself, and Simon reveals that a guy named Johnny had already talked a lot about him. Simon mentions that Johnny is Jay's only friend, but our guy denies it, saying he's just a colleague. Soon after, he asks if Jay is from the same country as Johnny since they seem so close. Our hero says no, and Simon notes that his comment might have sounded a tad racist. The campfire continues to crackle in the silence that has fallen between the two hitmen. Meanwhile, the two men exchange fixed glares, sizing each other up before making a move. The flames pop once more, breaking the silence and cranking up the tension of the moment. Without warning, Jay lunges forward with a punch aimed at Simon Jones's face. In response, the bearded man kicks the fire at him, creating an explosion of embers. Using this distraction, Simon grabs a sharp wooden spear that was hidden in the snow. Seizing the opportunity, he attacks our hero, who quickly gets up to defend himself. At the last moment, Jay manages to block the tip of the spear using only his small knife. Our protagonist's gaze remains focused and icy, even with the weapon pointed right at him. Simon then puts all his strength into the attack, trying to break through the assassin's defense. The guy in the suit withstands the impact, holding his blade firmly against the wood. With that, Jay manages to deflect the attack, pushing the spear aside with a swift move. Realizing his rival's strength, the target prepares another strike with his makeshift weapon. The bearded man spins and tries a horizontal swing, but the hitman dodges it perfectly. Right after, our protagonist retaliates with a clean cut to his opponent's side. The blade hits Simon's body dead on, and he screams in pain from the wound. Even injured, the target manages to grab Jay's arm to prevent a second attack. Because of this, Simon uses his other arm to swing the spear in a desperate lunge. Jay manages to break free and throws his knife with full force at the bearded man. The blade hits Simon's arm, making him drop a hidden axe, which our hero catches in mid-air. With the new weapon in hand, the guy in the suit advances with a dark look, ready to finish the job. Simon, now on the ground and completely done for, admits that the legendary Jay's reputation was no exaggeration. In his final moments, he asks if the Union sent him there because he supported Johnny. Our protagonist confirms that the organization is not at all happy with his friend's new firm. The target laughs and says it's much more than that, and that the Union plans to destroy Johnny and the entire company. Since he's going to be taken out anyway, Simon asks for Jay's honest opinion on who's in the right. He explains that ever since the Union monopolized the business, all hitmen have become dependent on it. This way, anyone who gets on the organization's blacklist simply can't find work anymore. And even the employees who aren't assassins treat the hitmen like they're scum. Simon states that people with no respect for the industry have become the industry itself. Bleeding heavily, he asks again if Jay really doesn't think the Union is in the wrong. The guy in the suit simply replies that he doesn't usually make that kind of judgment. The target seems to understand and, with a final breath, says he's curious about the future. Jay's reflection appears in Simon's eye as he passes on, hoping to see what the future holds. With the job done, our protagonist turns and leaves, leaving the body behind in the snow. As he walks away, he reflects on Simon's words and understands that this was just the beginning. The scene changes to a sunny day, showing the Union's imposing building in the city center. Inside the building, someone informs Jay that they've sent the data for the next target for him to review. Upon receiving the message, he realizes this new mission was exactly what Simon had predicted. Opening the file on his phone, the assassin discovers that his new target is his colleague, Johnny. At that moment, a flashback begins of when Johnny invited him for a drink, calling him a friend. Jay remembers correcting him, saying they were just co-workers as they toasted. He narrates that the Union paired assassins for missions, and it was on one of those that he met Johnny. After a tough job, Johnny approaches to formally introduce himself to his new partner. The two shake hands, with Jay introducing himself in his usual short and direct manner. Right after, Johnny mentions that it was his first time working with another Asian hitman. Excited about the partnership, he suggests they become friends, but Jay turns down the offer. With a smile, Johnny says that's excellent because our protagonist just made a new friend. Our hero tries to explain that he doesn't need friends, but Johnny insists he should take the chance. From then on, Jay narrates, Johnny remained friendly and became the only person close to him. On another occasion at the bar, Johnny calls him a close colleague and asks if he wants to get closer. Seeing our protagonist's surprise, Johnny suggests they become business partners. He reveals that he's starting his own company and will no longer work for the union. The reason is simple: he's sick of the organization taking a huge cut of their pay. Because of that, he invites Jay to join his new venture, promising success. But our protagonist immediately refuses the offer, leaving Johnny surprised by the quick response. The reason is that the assassin believes life, just like work, should be lived alone. Johnny sighs and admits that deep down he was already expecting that answer from his colleague. Jay then asks why he invited him, and his friend says he had to try anyway. With a serious look, Johnny warns that if his business takes off, Jay might be sent to take him out. Back in the present, our protagonist understands the warning and confirms the target is Johnny Wong. The person in the room corrects him, saying the target is the entire company, leaving Jay quite stunned. The man confirms the mission and reveals the reward: $25 million. Our protagonist then questions why the union would pay so much instead of using its own forces. The man explains that a direct attack would cause too much damage, and they prefer a surgical strike. He continues, saying that few hitmen can handle a task like this, and Jay is the most reliable. Given this, Jay accepts the contract but sets one condition: he promises to crush Johnny's firm. In exchange for destroying the company, the assassin demands that Johnny's life be spared. Jay reminds the man that almost no one else can do this job, and if he doesn't accept, the union will be in a tight spot. So, the executive agrees to the terms as long as Johnny is left unable to ever recover, and Jay agrees. The scene cuts to a view of the city as the sun sets on the horizon. Leaving the building, our protagonist walks down the street and wonders why he made that demand. He wonders if it's because he didn't want to be the one to take his former colleague's life. While pondering this, a little boy approaches him with a smile and offers him some bracelets. The boy says the bracelets have a mysterious power and that the assassin might need it. Curious, our protagonist asks the boy what kind of power it is. The boy smiles and reveals that it's the power to live a new life. The boy's words surprise him, and Jay decides to buy one of the bracelets. With the bracelet on his wrist, Jay decides it's time to start over. He thinks that after finishing this job right, he can finally begin again. The reward is $25 million, and he considers retiring with the money. Suddenly, a crowd of assassins runs toward him, ready to attack. As the enemies advance, he wonders what he would do after retiring. Our protagonist realizes he's never once stopped to think about that in his entire life as a hitman. Elsewhere, Johnny looks over the city from his luxurious office, a glass of whiskey in hand. Just then, Jay enters the room, all banged up after fighting an army of assassins. Seeing his friend's state, Johnny offers him a drink and comments that his company has really grown. Without waiting for a reply, the company boss pours the drink down our protagonist's throat. After chugging it all, Jay smashes the glass on the floor, showing his frustration. He then announces that Johnny's company is finished, and that he himself destroyed it today. Johnny replies with an annoyed look that the assassin doesn't look so great himself. Without wasting time, our protagonist throws a flashbang that goes off in his former colleague's face. The explosion sends the man flying backward as the window glass shatters. Even stunned by the blast, our protagonist barely has time to react. From the smoke, Johnny charges forward quickly, ready to attack. He closes in on Jay, preparing a quick and precise strike. With that, the company boss pulls out a knife that was hidden at his waist. Jay tries to get up to defend himself, but his exhausted body doesn't respond. In this situation, Johnny grabs him by the collar and yells, asking why he's doing all this. Without waiting for an answer, he attacks his former colleague with the blade without hesitation. With eyes red with fury, he demands to know why Jay is doing this to him. The knife gets dangerously close, and the glint of the blade reflects in Jay's eyes. At the last second, our protagonist uses his last bit of strength to dodge the attack. Using the opening, Jay retaliates with a powerful punch that connects with Johnny's face. The assassin is left breathless after using all his remaining energy on the blow. The punch lands squarely on his old friend's chin. Because of this, Johnny falls to the floor completely knocked out, and the confrontation ends. Jay then starts thinking about how to incapacitate him to fulfill his part of the deal. But our protagonist realizes he's also too injured to continue the mission. Suddenly, he hears clapping and a voice praising his incredible performance. Our protagonist turns and asks who the mysterious man that just appeared is. The man in the suit says he just came to ensure the job was done correctly. At that moment, red laser sights appear on Johnny's body, lying on the floor. The armed guards aim at Johnny, and our protagonist desperately tries to stop them. Then, one of the guards fires, but the shot ends up hitting Jay in the process. Even wounded, he throws himself in front of Johnny to shield him with his own body. Angrily, our protagonist yells that sparing his colleague's life was part of the deal. He falls to his knees, feeling the pain of the wound, and the man tells him not to get upset. The hitman glares at the man with a look full of hatred, ready to fight back. The executive adjusts his glasses and calmly says that, at the end of the day, it's all just business. He explains that the union realized that people like Jay and Johnny are a threat. Because they are too exceptional, they pose a risk to the organization's business. Furious, our protagonist yells that this isn't business, and his eyes glow blue. Ignoring the deal, the man says that people like them are a danger to the union. And so, the guards fire without mercy, hitting our protagonist's body dead on. The impact throws Jay backward, and he falls lifelessly to the office floor. At that exact moment, the bracelet on his wrist begins to glow with a bluish light. From there, a powerful energy envelopes him and transports him to a cosmic space. The light concentrates on the bracelet, and an energy butterfly appears over his hand. Suddenly, Jay's consciousness awakens inside a car on a dark street. He raises his hand and sees the glowing bracelet, wondering if he's alive. Outside, a man on the phone says he got distracted and ran over a delivery guy. Our protagonist realizes he's in Korea and hears the man say he was drunk. He understands that he's been reincarnated into the body of the delivery guy the drunk driver took out. While the driver thinks about making a run for it, our protagonist calls out to him, terrifying him. Without giving the guy time to react, Jay lands a punch with all his might right in his face. He continues to beat down the man, who, lying on the ground, screams for the police. With the driver knocked out, Jay realizes he passed away in America but was reborn in Korea. He reflects on having his journey end in America and being reborn in Korea, not understanding any of it. But now, with a determined look, our protagonist knows exactly what he needs to do. He swears revenge on everyone who betrayed and eliminated him for the sake of their business. From there, Jay gets into the drunkard's car and realizes he's really in Korea. With that, it hits him that he can't just drive to America for his revenge, and even if he could, the union isn't the kind of organization you just stumble upon. Tired of everything, our guy decides he needs a break after kicking the bucket and coming back. So, he decides to go to the original body owner's home to rest. To do that, he thinks about how assassins need to be subtle to get information. Nowadays, to get someone's data, you just need to hack their phone, and since he's in the original owner's body, using facial recognition is super easy. The phone unlocks immediately, and our protagonist has access to all the information. With the address in hand, he arrives at the small apartment of the body's former owner. The assassin tosses the keys on the table and notes that the place is nothing special. Opening the fridge, he sees there's no food at all, just a single bottle of water left. Using the phone, he finds out everything about the previous owner's life. He was a 27-year-old guy who failed at life and was drowning in debt. Our protagonist throws the empty bottle away, thinking about the guy's failed life. And to make matters worse, the poor soul got run over by a drunk driver in the middle of the street. Suddenly, someone starts pounding on the door, shouting the name Jin Jae Hyun. He checks his phone and sees it's past 1 in the morning and doesn't understand the situation. Opening the door, our protagonist faces 2 men in suits and asks who they are. The guys say they're loan sharks and they've come to collect the debt with high interest. Right then, Jay understands that they were the creditors of this body's previous owner. He peeks down the hall and sees that the apartment is number 301. A neighbor from the apartment next door is watching the commotion through a crack in her door. Out of patience, the loan sharks break down the door and barge into the apartment. One of them finds the car key on the table while the other complains about the empty fridge. The head guy threatens him for buying a car instead of paying off his debt. Jay then tells him to take the car since he has no money to pay. One of the loan sharks gets angry and says he can't make that decision on his own, but their boss cuts him off and tells his goons to gather around. He explains that it's better to take the car than to go back to their boss empty-handed. So, they all go down to the parking lot to check the vehicle's condition. The leader whispers to his partner to lowball the car's value so they can make a bigger profit. Right after, he says the car's value barely covers the interest on the debt. The loan shark points out a dent and says you can tell the car has been in an accident. Our protagonist then asks if just looking at the outside is enough for an appraisal. Suddenly, he grabs the head loan shark's head, sending the man into a panic. Then Jay forcefully smashes the guy's face into the car window so he can see inside. The other 2 goons are completely shocked and frozen by the scene. Without wasting time, our protagonist goes after the 2 men to take them down. He lands a precise elbow strike, breaking one of the loan shark's noses on the spot. Immediately after, Jay finishes off the last goon with a powerful punch to the stomach. Seeing his men on the ground, the boss trembles with fear and Jay realizes he's a coward. He stares at the loan shark and thinks that people like him only have 2 options, run or panic. The man opts for panic and pulls something from inside his jacket. Our protagonist stays on high alert, expecting the guy to pull out a firearm. But the loan shark pulls out a knife, and Jay remembers that things are different in Korea. With the blade in hand, the man lunges forward in a quick, desperate attack. Effortlessly, our protagonist dodges and disarms the loan shark with a single move. The boss is left completely confused, looking up at the sky. With that opening, Jay lands a punch with all his force right in his face. He then finishes the beatdown with a kick that knocks the loan shark to the ground. With incredible reflexes, our protagonist perfectly catches the man's knife in mid-air. He then stabs the blade into the ground, right next to the head loan shark's eye. With a deadly glare, he threatens the guys, saying that next time, he won't be so merciful. Given the situation, he tells the man to take the car and get out of there for good. The loan shark gets in the car with his unconscious goons and drives away, furious. Through the rearview mirror, he watches Jay standing there and wonders what kind of psycho he just messed with. Inside the car, the loan shark wonders why Jay, being so strong, took a beating earlier. Watching the car disappear, our protagonist thinks it was good to get rid of the stolen vehicle. The scene then focuses on his apartment window, where the light is still on. But just as he was about to go inside, he hears the neighbor call his name and gets annoyed, since all he wants is to sleep. The woman appears in the hallway, and Jay wonders why she's talking to him. With a smile, she reveals that she was spying and saw everything that happened outside. The woman says she was going to call the cops if he got beat up, but he was the one who beat up the guys. She comments that he's strong, and Jay asks if she's going to report him instead of the loan sharks. The neighbor says no, and that actually, she's become a little interested in him. Not paying much attention, our protagonist says he needs to rest and goes into his apartment. The girl is left standing in the hallway speechless, as he simply shuts the door in her face. Finally alone, the guy throws himself onto the bed, completely exhausted from the day he's had. Due to the accumulated fatigue, he passes out and falls into a deep sleep quickly. Sometime later, Jay wakes up starving and decides to go get a burger. Next, we see the sign of a 24-hour burger joint open in the city. At the joint, he eats a burger and remembers that the reason he's there is because of Johnny. In a flashback, Johnny asks why our protagonist always chooses that particular fast food place. He replies that it's good, but his friend expected a well-traveled assassin to have better taste. Jay explains that the burger there is perfect because it tastes the same anywhere in the world. Even the fries are standardized, and Johnny asks if that's why he likes the place. The assassin confirms it, because eating the wrong thing in another country could ruin an entire mission. So, he says the 24-hour spot helps him maintain perfect condition for the job. Johnny gets annoyed for being won over by logic, and Jay says it's because he's right. Back in the present, our protagonist remembers that the Union took out Johnny without mercy. He thinks that he was also eliminated by them, but for some reason he was the only one who came back. Suddenly, a woman with a tray approaches, complaining that she's starving. The woman walks right past him, and Jay is confused, not understanding what's happening. She sits down at another table, and our guy gets a feeling he's seen her somewhere before. At that moment, the woman's hand holding her food starts to glow with a bluish light. The energy transfers to the bracelet on Jay's wrist, which also glows, surprising him. Our protagonist stares at his own hand and wonders why the blue light appeared again. He then looks at the woman and notices that her hand is glowing too. The pink-haired woman turns to him, looking equally surprised by the situation. The two of them just stare at each other in silence as the energy connects them. The woman then asks if he's Jay, and our protagonist wants to know how she knows him. He starts connecting the dots and remembers his former assassin appearance. Seeing an image of Johnny superimposed over the woman, Jay asks if she's his old colleague. The blue energy in their hands pulses, confirming the identity of the two hitmen. The woman then confirms that she is Johnny, leaving our protagonist shocked by the revelation. With fury, Johnny lunges forward, shouting that he's the friend Jay mercilessly took out. The assassin is frozen by the accusation and can't react in time. Because of this, Johnny tackles him to the floor of the burger joint with a clean hit. While choking him, he yells that he thought they were real friends. Our protagonist understands his anger and desperately tries to explain. With difficulty, Jay says it was the Union that took them out, and Johnny stops the attack surprised. Still on top of him, Johnny asks if the Union also got him, and our protagonist confirms it. Suddenly, an employee from the restaurant shows up and yells that they can't fight in there. Johnny gets off him and apologizes as the guy starts cleaning the floor. The employee keeps cleaning the floor, that the two of them messed up during their intense fight. He then complains that if they were in such a hurry, they should have gotten a room. Now sitting at the table, Johnny, with his arms crossed, glares at our protagonist, annoyed. He questions him for refusing his partnership and then accepting the job to save him. The former colleague calls him weird, and Jay says that passing on and coming back is way more bizarre. Johnny gets closer to check out his new body and complains about what's missing down there. After finishing all the food, the guy wonders why all of this happened to them. He then remembers the bracelet and the blue light that connected them moments before. Our protagonist asks if Johnny bought a strange bracelet from a kid on the street. With that, Jay remembers the seller's words about the power to live a new life. he reveals that he also bought the same item, and Johnny realizes the bracelet is the cause. Faced with the situation, the former colleague asks what our protagonist is going to do now. With a dark look, our protagonist says they need to get revenge on the Union. But Johnny corrects him, saying he wants to know the plan for right now, and Jay doesn't understand. The former colleague then asks if he's found the body owner's house yet, and Jay confirms. So, Johnny gets up and says they should go there, but Jay is too tired. The woman explains that she used a lot of energy digging her way out of the ground, leaving our protagonist confused. She reveals that when she woke up, she was already buried and had to dig her way out. With that, Johnny says she needs a shower, and Jay agrees that's the right thing to do. From there, the two of them go together to our protagonist's small apartment. Arriving there, Johnny heads straight to the bathroom to take a shower and relax. Meanwhile, our protagonist waits, sitting on the bed in his new room. After the shower, the two go out for a walk, and Johnny says she would have hated him forever. She explains that if the Union's plan had worked, she would have ended up being taken out by his hands. Jay looks at her, and she asks if he still hates her enough to take her out now. Our protagonist says no, and Johnny stretches her arms above her head. With a smile, she says he's already paid for his choices by losing his own life. Our protagonist is confused by her words and wonders what he's supposed to have realized. Suddenly, the bathroom door opens and Johnny praises the hot water in the shower. Hearing that she's finished her shower, Jay turns around and is completely shocked by the scene. Johnny walks out of the bathroom with just a towel, complaining that her hair takes forever to dry. At this, our protagonist covers his eyes and yells, asking why she came out like that. She retorts, asking if she should put her dirty clothes back on after getting clean, and Jay gets her logic. Out of patience, he throws a change of clothes at her and tells her to get dressed already. Later, the two get ready for bed, with Johnny on the floor and Jay on the bed. Lying on the makeshift mattress, the woman asks how he plans to get revenge on the Union. He repeats that he's going to return the favor, and she insists on knowing how he'll do it. Our protagonist mysteriously replies that he's going to use business for his revenge. He then ends the conversation and tells her to go to sleep, as they can talk tomorrow. The next day, the two take a cab, and Johnny complains about the calls from the girl's father. On the way to her house, Jay comments that Johnny's new face looks a lot like his old one. She jokes that her original face was better looking, and our protagonist laughs at the joke. Johnny notes that he's reading his phone in Korean, and that they can still speak the language. She remembers news stories about people waking from comas speaking another language and wonders if that's their case. Just then, the car stops, and the driver announces they've arrived at their destination. So, the two get out of the car and stare at the place a bit surprised. They find themselves in front of a gigantic mansion. Johnny then goes to the gate and rings the bell to get inside. A voice over the intercom asks in surprise how Somi managed to get there. Our protagonist is confused by the situation and doesn't understand what's happening. The girl's father's voice tells her to come in, and Johnny replies that she's on her way. With a smile, the woman tells Jay that it looks like this is her new house. She explains that she needs to sort this situation out and will go to his place later. Jay then returns to his apartment and thinks that Johnny will have problems with her new family. Lying on his bed, he reflects that it was lucky to be reborn into the body of someone who lives alone. Looking at his phone, our protagonist notices that the former owner didn't talk to anyone. With a slight smile, he thinks that he also lived alone until the day he passed. Our protagonist reflects that he lived his whole life without family and without friends. He drinks some water and thinks that Johnny would be mad if he said, "without friends." Suddenly, there's a knock on the door, and he immediately thinks it's his former colleague. Opening the door, the guy is surprised she got there faster than he expected. But the next moment, a knife lunges toward him with full force. With incredible reflexes, our protagonist manages to dodge the blow at the last second. The intruder is a man in a hat and glasses who tries to hit him again with the blade. Without hesitation, the man charges at our protagonist to finish the attack. Because of the force of the blow, the assassin ends up being pushed into the apartment. He uses his hand to grab the blade and prevent the fatal cut. The man in the hat is completely shocked to see that he stopped the knife. Using the opening, Jay twists the guy's wrist and throws him to the floor to disarm him. The knife flies through the air and ends up stuck in the apartment's wooden floor. The intruder glares at him with hatred even after losing his weapon. The two stare each other down for a moment before continuing the fight. With his eyes glowing blue, our protagonist prepares for the counter-attack. He then lands a full-force punch on the intruder's chin. The man in the hat falls hard to the floor, completely stunned by the blow. Without wasting time, G puts pressure on him and asks who sent him there. The guy spits blood, and our protagonist suspects who's behind the attack. With a dark look, he then asks if it was the Union that sent the assassin. The intruder says nothing and remains on the floor with his face all messed up. Nearby, the fallen knife on the floor catches the man's attention. Seeing his chance, he desperately runs towards the blade to arm himself. but our protagonist is faster and lands another punch, breaking his glasses. Because of that, the intruder falls once more with nowhere to run. Jay picks up the knife and thinks that there's no way the Union could know about his current situation. From there, he approaches the fallen man, ready to get some information. Without mercy, our protagonist uses the blade to pressure the assassin. The knife pierces the guy's shoulder, and he screams in pain from the serious injury. With the knife pressed against him, Jay demands to know who sent him there. The intruder trembles in fear and stammers, unable to answer the question. The scene cuts to Johnny's new family, with her brother and sister sitting down. The girl's father complains that she disappeared and left everyone worried about her. He says her siblings were also distressed, but Johnny notices they look scared. From this, she understands that the two of them had something to do with the girl's demise. Later, the brother goes outside and yells into his phone, demanding to know what happened. He complains that the hired killer swore he did the job and asks if the departed came back to life. Out of patience, the guy tells the person on the other end to check the front gate cameras. The person informs him that Somi arrived in a taxi with a man and that they already know where the two came from. The brother then orders the assassin to find and erase the man who was with her, as he is a risk. Furious, he yells that this is a warranty job since the first one went wrong and the girl came back alive. The guy complains that the hitman took the cash and still did a completely sloppy job. At that moment, his sister approaches and calls his name, surprising him. The woman asks what happened with Somi, and the brother replies that the hired assassin failed. The brother says that actually all of this is for their own good, and Ju Kung doesn't understand. At this, the woman asks him to stop and reminds him that Somi is still their sister. Annoyed, the guy yells that she's the mistress's daughter and that they're only half-siblings. He remembers that their mother's illness got worse when she found out about Somi and her mother. He explains that their father might give the company to Somi and asks if their mother would be happy about that. In a rage, the brother yells Han Ju Kang's name, showing all his frustration. He then tells her to listen to him because, in the end, all of this is for her own good. The scene then cuts back to our protagonist's apartment at night. The intruder reveals that the person who sent him to take him out was also the one who ordered Sami's elimination. Our protagonist thinks that if he finishes him now, cleaning up the body would be a huge problem. He reflects that he's no longer a professional assassin and can't call a cleanup crew. Meanwhile, the intruder wonders how our protagonist can be so strong and fast. Seeing an opening, the man decides he's going to attack again while he's distracted. But Jay notices the movement and stops him before the guy can even move. The intruder realizes it's not going to work and that his instincts and experience are warning him of the danger. With a deadly glare, our protagonist senses that the intruder is no match for him. He then asks the man if he wants to live, and the guy confirms with a trembling voice. So, Jay tells him to leave and say he didn't find him at the apartment. The guy also warns the assassin not to accept any more jobs related to them. Finally, he threatens him, saying that if he sees him again, he'll end up gone for good. The intruder leaves and the door to apartment 301 slams shut. Once outside, the assassin gets a call asking if the job was done. The guy lies, saying the target wasn't there, and the client complains about the shoddy work. Out of patience, he says he'll refund the money and asks not to be contacted again. At the mansion, Sami's brother is confused when he hears about the refund. With that, the guy gets furious and starts yelling on the phone, thinking it's a joke. At that moment, Johnny walks past him and, with a mocking smile, says it was a job well done. The woman then turns and leaves, leaving her brother standing there, speechless. Angrily, the man tells his subordinate to find another assassin who can do the job right. Meanwhile, Johnny goes through Somi's phone and starts to understand the girl's situation. With the new information, Johnny discovers that the girl's father is Han Kang Moon, the chairman of HK Group. The two siblings who welcomed her are Han Ju Sok and Han Ju Kung, the children of the first wife. The first wife passed from an illness, and the second, who was Somi's mother, passed in an accident. He wonders if the siblings took out the girl for the inheritance, and from the looks on their faces, it seems so. At that moment, the older sister approaches and calls her Somi in a worried voice. The woman then asks if she's okay and what happened to make her disappear like that. Johnny pretends not to remember anything and says she woke up on a hill from drinking too much. Given this, he wonders if the girl is just testing him to see what he really knows. But Ju Kang holds her hand and thanks her for coming back, leaving Johnny quite surprised. Looking at the woman's face, he realizes that she seems genuinely worried about her sister. On top of that, he also ends up finding his new little sister pretty cute and is charmed. Suddenly, the older brother approaches from behind, observing their conversation. Johnny then seizes the chance and places a tracker on Ju Kang's hand without anyone noticing. She warns him to be careful, because their brother will try to get rid of him again. The woman cries for almost having lost her sister, and for being too pathetic to help her. The woman cries and Johnny corrects her, calling her sister, once more to calm her down. He tells Ju Kang not to cry and promises that he'll make sure nothing bad happens. The girl is confused by this attitude and wonders if Somi always talked like that. Later, Johnny calls Jay and says she's figured out the situation and asks if he's okay. She's surprised to hear an assassin went after him but trusts that he handled it. Jay confirms it was the same person who ordered Somi's hit, and his colleague says the guy is persistent. Our protagonist explains that the hitman didn't know the client's name because he used a middleman. He says he needs to deal with the guy before anything else, and goes back to eating his snack. Jody reminds him of their conversation about getting revenge on the union using business as a weapon. She says the way he dealt with the organization was right, and that's why they wanted him gone. Our protagonist becomes thoughtful and asks her what the plan is to start this company. She gets annoyed that he doesn't have a plan but reveals that there's a shortcut to becoming a boss. Our protagonist asks what that would be, and she reveals the answer right away. The solution is to simply buy a company that already exists, and Jay gets the idea immediately. Night falls on the city as the two assassins begin to plot their revenge. While brushing his teeth, our protagonist thinks about acquiring a business and regrets not asking if the hitman had an organization. He's still in the bathroom when he suddenly hears a strange noise coming from the front door. Immediately after, someone starts pounding on the door with great force, getting his attention. He wonders if the hitman from before came back, even after the warning he gave. The person outside shouts the name Jin Jae Hyun, and our protagonist recognizes the voice instantly. Opening the door, he faces the loan sharks again and asks why they came back. The guys, all bruised up, angrily shout that they obviously came to collect his debt. Suddenly, their boss appears, and the two goons bow, calling the guy boss. Our protagonist is confused by the situation and wonders who this supposed boss is. The blonde man in the white suit then introduces himself as the head of the loan shark firm. With a smile on his face, the assassin realizes he's found the perfect business to take over. The scene cuts to a car with a license plate ending in 6418, parked. Someone shows a lighter to the boss and asks if he got that instead of the money. This is Baek Jum, the president of the illegal loan shark operation called Platinum Finance. The goons apologize and the boss complains that he needs to pay tribute and they haven't collected anything. What makes him even angrier is that his men got beat up by the debtor. Angrily, he kicks one of the goons and yells that the target is just a delivery guy. The goon insists the guy was strong, and the boss scoffs, saying he watches too many movies. Out of patience, the blonde man decides he'll go handle the situation personally. He says he's gonna see with his own eyes who this so-called tough guy is. Back in the present, the boss asks if our protagonist is the one who beat up his employees. The loan shark sizes him up and says he doesn't look like much and tells him to come with them. He then explains that he has a special way of dealing with debtors like him. The goons think he's gonna refuse and fight back, being ex-special forces or something. But our protagonist surprises everyone and agrees to go with them right away. The loan sharks are left confused and wonder why he gave up so easily. The boss thinks he recognized the difference in their levels, and that he has fighting experience. Later, the goons are outside smoking, still confused about everything. One of them wonders why he followed them, and the other says he has no idea who he is. The scene then shows our protagonist tied to a chair inside a warehouse. Tied up, our protagonist analyzes the location and the loan shark's office. He thinks about how hard it is to control the temperature in a place like that. Next, he looks at the makeshift gym and asks how much the rent is for the place. The head loan shark approaches and asks if he came there to look at real estate. He says people like him prefer to string the debtor along to make more on interest. The head loan shark explains that's why even banks have early payoff fees. But he says that with deadbeat debtors, it's best to get the principal back as quickly as possible. So, he tells him to pay the debt, and our protagonist questions how he's supposed to do that. The loan shark tells him to call everyone he knows and ask for help to pay. Our protagonist thinks that no one would lend money to someone indebted to loan sharks. With a wicked smile, the man says what he needs is desperation in his voice. He then orders his goons to attack him to put that desperation in him. The guys beat him with baseball bats without any mercy. Meanwhile, the boss just watches everything, smoking calmly. All beaten up, our protagonist begs them to stop and says he'll call anyone. The boss smiles and says his voice is now perfect for asking for money. With that, one of the goons hands the phone to our protagonist to make the call. But instead of calling, he uses the phone to free himself from the ropes with a quick move. One of the goons is in shock, not understanding how he got loose so easily. Without wasting time, G goes after the guys and hits the first one in the face with the phone. He then takes down the second loan shark, terrifying all the others. Our protagonist then uses the phone's flash to blind the last goon. The guy screams in pain from the surprise attack, and Jay finishes him with another blow. With the three goons on the floor, he prepares to face the real challenge. The warehouse light flickers, creating a tense atmosphere for the final showdown. Our protagonist then slowly walks toward the head of the loan sharks. Baek Jum Tae yells for his men outside to come in, but no one answers. The other loan sharks outside pretend not to hear anything and stand there, scared. Seeing that he's alone, the boss decides to fight and gets ready for combat. Without waiting any longer, he lunges forward with a flying kick toward our protagonist, but our protagonist blocks the blow with his arm without any difficulty. He realizes the boss is fast and retaliates with a clean punch to his face. The assassin's eyes remain cold and focused on his opponent during the exchange. The blow hits the loan shark squarely, and he feels the force of the impact immediately. Jay understands that the guy is strong and isn't the boss for no reason. The loan shark gets angry that he easily dodged all of his punches. Confidently, the blonde man says a gym rat can't handle a real street fight. He then attacks again, but our protagonist dodges perfectly. The boss is hit hard and is completely surprised by the force of the blow. Without giving him time to react, our protagonist continues the sequence of punches. The loan shark tries to defend himself but can't stop the rain of rapid-fire hits. Immediately after, Jay finishes the combo with a powerful kick to his opponent. The impact sends the boss to the floor, completely knocked out, and the fight is over. Without mercy, our protagonist continues the beatdown to secure the victory. With a final powerful punch, he knocks out the head of the loan sharks for good. The loan shark begs him to stop, but Jay says there's still no desperation in his voice. The man is completely terrified by our protagonist's gaze. With that, he pleads for his life and asks if they can talk about it. With a smile, Jay agrees and asks if they can talk business now. A while later, the boss, all beaten up, hears from Jay that he's taking over the company. The loan shark angrily asks if this is that hostile takeover thing he's always hearing about. The blonde guy calls him old-fashioned, and Jay replies that this is how the underworld works. He then sits down and says he'll explain the details of how things work around there. Seoul's underworld is ruled by two major organizations called Seogwang and Dongshin. Platinum finances his, but since it operates in Seogwang's territory, they pay tribute to them. Jay grabs a water, and the loan shark explains that there are guys like the Union there too. He warns that Seogwang won't just stand by if he messes with their territory. Calmly, our protagonist says he'll just take over Seogwang too, and the boss is shocked. The loan shark tries to explain that he doesn't understand the scale of these organizations' power. He asks if Jay can imagine the power of someone who controls half of a city like Seoul. Our protagonist says he'll take Seogwang first and then Dongshin too. At this point, the loan shark realizes that the guy's plan is to dominate the entire Seoul underworld. Faced with this situation, Baek Joom Tae is certain that our protagonist is a complete nut job.